President of the United States said 4 words on a Monday morning that should have ended a war. Instead, by afternoon, he said 4 different words, and Wall Street erased 6 weeks of losses in a single session. Here is what nobody is telling you. It is day 46 of Operation Epic Fury. The U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports went live at 10 o'clock this morning. Vance came home from Islamabad empty-handed after 21 hours of failed talks. The ceasefire clock has 7 days left. And when a reporter asked President Trump whether he cared if Iran returned to negotiations, the sitting president of a country at war looked up and said, "I don't care." 2 words, not a strategy, not a bluff. 2 words spoken in the open air outside the White House about the country his military has been fighting for 46 days. But here is where this story fractures. Because a few hours later, at the highest point of the trading day, Trump stood before cameras again and said something that directly contradicted those 2 words. He said, "We've been called by the other side." He said, "They'd like to make a deal very badly." No name, no timestamp, no details, just the right people in Iran called, and they want a deal. The S&P 500 went vertical. By the closing bell, it had erased every single point of war losses since February 28th. The Dow jumped 302 points. Oil pulled back from $100. All of it on 4 words from a president who said he didn't care 4 hours earlier. If you want to understand what is actually happening here, stay with me, because this is not chaos. What you are watching has a name. If this kind of verified, no-spin analysis is what you've been looking for, subscribe now. New developments in this war are breaking every few hours. Every analyst covering this war made the same mistake going in. They assumed that when Trump said something, it meant something fixed, that a deadline was a deadline, that a failed negotiation was a failure, that "I don't care" meant the door was closed. But here is the pattern that has governed every single week of this war without exception. Every deadline that was supposed to be final got extended. Every negotiation that supposedly collapsed produced a new negotiation. Every statement that Iran's military was obliterated was followed by Iranian military action. Every "I don't care" was followed by a phone call. This is not inconsistency. A U.S. official described it to Axios using a bizarre metaphor, but it was accurate. What you are watching is a negotiating strategy built on deliberate escalation and deliberate de-escalation, fired in rapid sequence, designed to make the other side blink. "I don't care" is a move. "They called us" is the next move. They are not contradictions. They are consecutive steps in the same game. Now, here is the question that should be keeping you up at night. If both sides are still playing this game, what actually changed between Sunday morning when Vance left Islamabad and Monday afternoon when the right people called? Because Iran's nuclear chief said this week that any attempt to limit enrichment would fail. Iran's parliamentary speaker called the enrichment issue a ceasefire violation. The Supreme Leader's office has said nothing publicly about flexibility. The right people called. The right people have not said yes. So what exactly changed? That answer is still locked inside a phone call nobody is talking about. And I will tell you what we do and don't know about it right now. Let's be precise about what the blockade is, because the coverage has been sloppy. The U.S. Navy is not closing the Strait of Hormuz. It is blockading Iranian ports and coastal areas while allowing non-Iranian vessels to transit the strait freely. That distinction is not a technicality. It is the entire strategy. Strangling Iranian trade specifically is an act of economic warfare against one country. Closing the strait entirely would be an act of economic warfare against every importing nation on Earth, including American allies who depend on Gulf energy. Iran called it piracy anyway. The IRGC Navy warned that any military vessel approaching the strait would be considered a ceasefire violation and would meet a severe response. Iran's foreign minister told his Saudi counterpart that American greed in the negotiations caused Islamabad to fail, not bad faith, not dishonesty. Greed, specifically. American demands on nuclear enrichment that Iran considers excessive. Britain is not supporting the blockade. Russia says the ceasefire applies to Lebanon too. France says Lebanon must be included in any agreement. The United States is conducting a naval operation that its closest allies will not publicly back in a war whose terms are disputed by every major power that has weighed in. And in the middle of all of this, a number that has received almost no attention in mainstream coverage. 20,000. That is the number of seafarers currently stranded on vessels in the Persian Gulf. Not statistics, not leverage, human beings on ships running low on food, water, and medical supplies. A maritime labor union says the crisis is worsening daily. The United Nations called it a growing humanitarian emergency inside the broader emergency this war has already created. 3,000 confirmed dead inside Iran, more than 2,000 in Lebanon, 13 Americans, and 20,000 sailors who cannot go home. This channel documents every verified fact in this war. No fabricated sources, no invented quotes. If that matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every update drops the moment we have it confirmed. Here is the most unsettling thing happening right now, and it is hiding in plain sight. The S&P 500 closed above its pre-war level on April 14th. It had already surged once on the ceasefire announcement, then given back those gains when the Strait didn't reopen. It recovered on Islamabad, then fell when the talks collapsed. It recovered again when Trump said the right people called. Every single market move in this war has been driven by what Trump says, not by what is actually happening on the ground. The Strait is still not fully open. The nuclear deal is not signed. The enriched uranium is still inside Iran. The IRGC still has its finger near the trigger. The ceasefire expires in 7 days, and yet the market is betting on a deal. What traders are pricing in is not reality. It is a probability chain. The right people's call leads to a ceasefire extension. The extension leads to a second round of talks. The second round narrows the gap on enrichment. The blockade gets lifted. Everything resolves. That chain could happen. Pakistan is offering to host another round this week. Turkey's foreign minister says a 45 to 60-day extension is still possible. The UN Secretary General is urging both sides to preserve the ceasefire. The architecture for a deal exists. But here's the question the market is not pricing in. What is the specific Iranian action that would cause Trump to lift the blockade? Trump has not said. And the IRGC has been explicit. Every military vessel approaching the Strait is a potential incident. The blockade is live. The ceasefire expires April 21st. And at no point since Sunday morning has Iran's documented position on nuclear enrichment moved 1 degree. The market is betting on a phone call. The ships are still not moving. There is a second crisis running parallel to the Iran nuclear track, and it nearly broke the Islamabad talks on its own. On Tuesday, Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors met at the State Department in Washington, the first direct talks between the two governments in the modern era of this conflict. It happened because Trump reportedly applied pressure on Israel to engage Lebanon's government directly as a mechanism to address Hezbollah's role in the ceasefire without formally naming Lebanon in the Iran-U.S. document. Hezbollah's leader, Naim Qassem, had urged Lebanon to cancel the talks. The Lebanese government went anyway. This is significant. It means the Lebanon dimension, the question of whether Iran's regional allies are covered by the ceasefire, is now being negotiated on a separate track, simultaneously. Russia, France, and Britain all say Lebanon must be included. America and Israel say it is a separate matter. Iran says protecting its allies is non-negotiable. Whether those two tracks can converge before April 21st is the diplomatic architecture question this week is trying to answer. There are more variables in motion right now than at any point since February 28th. This is the question I want you to sit with, because the answer will tell you everything. The S&P 500 says the war is effectively over, or nearly. It has priced in the deal. It has erased the losses. It is voting with trillions of dollars that the right people's phone call means something real. The Strait of Hormuz says something different. Ships are still not moving. Oil nearly hit $100 the same morning the blockade went live. Gas at the pump is above $4. The IRGC has not stood down. The enriched uranium has not moved. Vance's final and best offer has been sitting on the table, unanswered, since Sunday morning. April 21st is 7 days away. Both sides have deployed every instrument available to them. The blockade is on one side. Nuclear enrichment defiance is on the other. 20,000 sailors are caught between them. Two truths cannot both be right on April 22nd. Either the right people's call produces a framework, the blockade lifts, the ceasefire extends, and the market was correct all along. Or, I don't care, was the more accurate statement. And we are about to find out what happens when a ceasefire expires with a naval blockade still in place, an IRGC with its hand on the trigger, and a stock market that bet on the wrong outcome. Both sides are still here. That is the one fact no analyst predicted on February 28th, and the one fact that gives this moment its fragile, genuine possibility. Something is going to break first. The question is what? And you need to be here when it does. Subscribe now and enable notifications. We cover this war with verified facts only. No spin, no fabricated sources, no invented quotes. April 21st is the hard deadline. When the ceasefire either holds or collapses, you will get the full documented breakdown here first, not hours later, not with the wrong information. Drop your analysis in the comments below. Question A. The S&P 500 erased all war losses based on Trump saying the right people called. Iran's enrichment position has not publicly shifted since Islamabad collapsed. What specifically has changed, and what documented evidence exists that Iran moved between Sunday morning and Monday afternoon? Question B. The blockade is live. The IRGC says any approaching vessel is a potential incident. Britain won't back it. 20,000 sailors are stranded. What is the single specific Iranian action that causes Trump to lift it? And at what point does the blockade itself become the trigger that ends the ceasefire before April 21st? Question C. On April 22nd, one of two things will be true. The market was right and a framework exists, or the Strait was right and it doesn't. Which one are you betting on, and why? Every comment is read. The best analysis is featured. Share this before April 21st. Because on April 22nd, we find out which version of this story was real.